They thought kicking a disabled black girl in the schoolyard made them powerful, but all it really did was expose how tiny their courage truly was. In broad daylight, in front of the whole campus, Nala lay on the concrete while those wannabe tough guys laughed, completely unaware that their little show of dominance was about to summon a storm louder than their egos. Because seconds later, 15 Hell's Angels rolled in like judgment on roaring engines, and every bully's face turned ghost white. The afternoon sun draped Crestwood High's courtyard in a warm golden sheet, the kind that made the fountain spray glitter like crystal dust. Students spilled out of classrooms in a messy wave, laughing, shouting, slamming lockers, yet one small figure moved slower than the rest. Nala Johnson limped across the yard with her crutches, her left leg bound tightly in a white cast. Each step was deliberate, careful, almost silent, until silence was no longer an option. Cole Branson stepped directly into her path, his varsity jacket glowing obnoxiously bright under the sun. His two friends flanked him like loyal shadows. Cole cocked his head and smirked, the kind of smirk that carried decades of entitlement, even though he was only 16. "Well, look who's limping around again," he said loudly, making sure everyone within 10 feet could hear. "Little crippled girl couldn't stay home today?" Nala didn't look up. She didn't argue. She simply shifted her weight on her crutches and tried to move around him. But Cole sidestepped, blocking her again, closer this time. Close enough for her to smell the cologne he wore to compensate for his insecurity. "Where you going, huh?" he taunted. "Slow traffic needs clearance." A couple of students looked over, but their eyes slid away just as quickly. No one wanted conflict with Cole Branson, the star player, the bully with a father powerful enough to bury complaints before they ever reached the principal's desk. Nala swallowed and whispered, "Please, just let me pass." Cole scoffed. "How about you learn to walk first?" Before she could react, before anyone could predict his next move, Cole lifted his foot and kicked her cast hard. The crack wasn't from bone. It was the sound of her crutch clattering against the concrete as she collapsed. Pain shot up her leg like a lightning bolt tearing through her nerves. Her palms scraped the ground, rough and burning. Gasps erupted around them. Someone muttered, "Dude, what the hell?" But no one stepped forward. No one dared. Nala's breath trembled. Her eyes squeezed shut as she exhaled a painful cry, not loud, but raw, the kind that spoke of fear layered on top of humiliation. And that's when it happened. A distant rumble rolled across the schoolyard, low, heavy, primal. At first, people thought it was thunder, or maybe a construction truck. But the sound grew sharper, angrier, multiplying into a chorus of engines that vibrated through the ground beneath their feet. Cole froze, mid-laugh. His friends exchanged confused glances. The rumble continued to swell, echoing against the brick walls of Crestwood High like something alive, something approaching with purpose. Students began looking around, shading their eyes from the sun, searching for the source. Even the birds that perched on the courtyard trees burst into the sky, startled by the noise. Nala lifted her head, still shaking. She didn't understand what was happening. She only knew one thing. The engine roar responded almost instantly to her cry, as if the world had heard her pain and sent something back in return. Something powerful, something dangerous. Cole stepped back, not much, but enough to reveal the first flicker of fear in his eyes. No one knew that his kick had just pulled a storm straight toward Crestwood High, a storm he was absolutely not prepared to face. And as the roar of engines grew louder, the leaves around the fountain began to tremble. The sound kept rising, rattling the courtyard like an omen no one could ignore. The courtyard erupted into a whisper storm within seconds of Nala hitting the ground. Dozens of students circled loosely around the scene, not close enough to intervene, but close enough to feed on the tension, like hungry spectators at a street fight. Voices clashed, overlapping in anxious bursts. "Oh my God, did he actually kick her cast? Dude, she could have broken it again! Why does no one stop him?" But the whispers shifted direction when that strange rumble rolled across the yard again, louder this time, more distinct, more mechanical. A girl near the fountain grabbed her friend's arm. "Wait, do you hear that? That's not a truck." Another student's eyes widened. I swear I just heard my cousin say a biker group was spotted on Elm Street. Bro, don't joke. Why would bikers come here? I'm serious. My phone buzzed, someone said. A whole pack of motorcycles is headed this way. The rumor spread like gasoline meeting open flame. Within 10 seconds, it wasn't one biker. It was 3, then 5. Then someone shouted, "No, it's 15. 15 freaking bikers." Even students in the hallway began spilling outside, drawn by the noise and the sudden buzz of adrenaline. The atmosphere thickened, crackling with anticipation and confusion. Nala, still on the ground, pushed herself onto her elbows. Her breath came uneven, but her eyes flicked to the faces around her, faces pale with shock, uncertainty, and something else she couldn't place. Fear. Cole noticed it too, and he hated it. He stepped forward, puffing his chest like he was trying to reclaim the moment. "Relax, everybody," he said loudly, lifting his hands as if he was conducting an orchestra of idiots. "It's probably just some wannabe biker dudes trying to look cool." A few students glanced at him, not convinced. The engine noise was now rhythmic, multiple engines, not one, deep, heavy, coordinated. Cole rolled his eyes dramatically. "Seriously? You think some trashy bikers are coming here because of her?" He jerked his chin toward Nala with a mocking snort. "That's adorable," someone muttered. "Cole, shut up. This sounds serious." But Cole wasn't done. He forced a grin, trying to mask the tremor starting to crawl up his spine. "It's probably just some broke guys with loud pipes. Chill. They can't even afford gas. You think they can afford to cause trouble?" His friends chuckled, but it was hollow forced. Their eyes kept darting toward the main gate, where the sound grew clearer, sharper, almost metallic. Nala managed to sit upright. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew one thing. The sound wasn't stopping. It wasn't fading. It was coming directly toward the school. The courtyard fell into an eerie, half-silent students, straining their ears, exchanging glances that grew more uneasy by the second. Then someone exclaimed, "No way, look at the ground!" People looked down. Dust on the pavement danced lightly. Water in the fountain rippled in tiny, expanding circles. It felt like the earth itself was warning them. Tension tightened the air, pulling every muscle and heartbeat into the same rhythm as the approaching engines. Cole's smirk faltered not fully, but enough for his friends to notice. "We're fine," he snapped, more to himself than to them. "It's nothing." But he didn't sound convinced, not even close. Everyone believed this was just coincidence. A loud street, a noisy vehicle, a random afternoon. But the coincidence was about to transform into a nightmare none of them could outrun, because now the engines weren't just noise, they were vibration, reality. Thunder with intention. The distant rumble morphed into a physical tremor beneath their feet, turning the courtyard into a warning drumbeat no one dared ignore. The rumble finally broke over Crestwood High like a wave, no longer a distant tremor, but a full-blown roar that swallowed every conversation in the courtyard. Students turned toward the main gate just in time to see the first glint of chrome emerge from behind the trees lining the parking lot. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, 15 Harley-Davidsons burst through the school entrance in a perfectly aligned formation, engines snarling like a pack of mechanical beasts claiming territory. The ground vibrated under their wheels. Exhaust curled in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Screams erupted. Books dropped. Backpacks flew. Students scattered in every direction, fleeing instinctively from the thunder rolling toward them. The courtyard transformed from a casual after-school hangout into a chaos zone. Cole's jaw slackened. "What the—" His words were drowned out by the synchronized revving of 15 engines, each growl sharper and heavier than the last. These weren't hobby riders. They weren't bored men looking for attention. This was a unit, a formation with discipline and purpose too precise, too intimidating to be a coincidence. The lead Harley, a matte black monster with custom bars and a skull emblem, rolled to a slow, deliberate stop right at the center of the courtyard. One by one, the others followed, forming a semicircle that closed off every escape route behind them. It was calculated, predatory, controlled. Students froze behind benches, pillars, and stair rails, holding their breath. Nala remained where she was, half upright, half collapsed, watching through the haze of pain as the lead rider cut his engine. The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice the air open. The rider swung his boot to the ground. He was enormous, broad shoulders, a heavy leather jacket covered in patches and metal pins, gloves thick enough to crush stone. His helmet was matte black, the visor hiding his face completely. But when he reached up and removed it, gasps shot across the courtyard like a chain reaction. "Holy crap, he's huge! That's no way, that's Rook Maddox!" Students recognized him instantly. Everyone in town knew the name. Rook Maddox, vice president of the local Hells Angels chapter. A man whose reputation alone could silence entire bars. His beard was thick and streaked with gray, his eyes cold steel, a gaze that had seen fights, betrayals, and darker things Crestwood kids couldn't imagine. But when he turned his head, his gaze didn't land on Cole, or the trembling students, or the frightened staff peering from the windows. His eyes locked onto Nala, not with confusion, not with surprise, but with something unsettlingly close to recognition. He took one slow step toward her, then another. His boots thudded against the concrete with an authority that made even the bravest students recoil. Cole felt a chill stab through his spine, but he pushed out a shaky laugh. "What? They're here for her? That's ridiculous." No one answered him. All they saw was Rook Maddox, lowering his helmet to his side, his gaze fixed solely on the injured black girl on the ground, studying her face as if confirming something long buried. As if he had known her before this moment. As if this wasn't just a rescue, but a return. The other bikers stayed silent, engines off, awaiting his signal. Cole swallowed, suddenly aware of how small he felt, how thin his voice sounded against the weight of 15 men who looked like they'd seen more violence than he'd ever imagined. Rook's eyes never drifted to Cole, not even for a second. His entire focus was on Nala, with the kind of familiarity that suggested a connection far deeper than any of them could comprehend. A cold shiver crept down Cole's spine, warning him that whatever this was, it was no longer a situation he could control. The courtyard felt unnaturally still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Dust floated in the sunlight between Rook Maddox and the fallen girl at his feet. Students watched from behind pillars and benches, their hearts pounding in sync with the fading echo of motorcycle engines. Rook knelt slowly beside Nala, his shadow engulfing her small frame. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. Instead, he examined the scene the way a man studies a battlefield before stepping into the fire. His gaze landed on something near her hand, her crutch, lying bent at an awkward angle on the concrete. He reached down and lifted it with one hand. The leather of his gloves creaked as he studied the long canvas padding. A dark impression interrupted the faded stitching, a footprint. Fresh, sharp, cruel. A shoe print shaped like a confession. The murmurs behind them died instantly. Rook's jaw tensed. The air grew colder, heavier like a storm cloud forming inches above the ground. Cole hadn't moved at first, but now, standing 20 feet away, he forced himself forward with a confidence he didn't feel. His friends didn't follow. Even they weren't stupid enough to stand next to him now. Cole stopped when he realized how massive Rook was up close, but pride pushed his words out anyway. "You can't be here," he snapped, though his voice broke slightly. "This is school property. You don't have the right." Rook lifted his head. One look, just one. Cold, unblinking steel met the shaky arrogance of a teenage bully. Cole's breath hitched, but he quickly masked it with a smirk. "I said," Cole continued, louder, "you don't have the right to walk in here like you own the place. Who do you think you are?" Rook rose to his full height, towering over Cole. He stepped forward, the crutch still in his hand, the footprint visible for everyone to see. "I didn't come here," Rook said, his voice low and dangerous, "to ask for permission." The words hit harder than a punch. Some students covered their mouths. Others whispered prayers they hadn't spoken since childhood. Cole's smirk thinned into a hard swallow. Nala watched them through tears not just from pain, but from fear of what could happen next. She had seen adults confront Cole before. Teachers, parents, coaches. None of them scared him. But this man wasn't like them. Rook was built from steel and storms, not meetings and policies. Cole attempted one more act of bravado, puffing his chest out. "You don't intimidate me," he said, though his eyes flickered with uncertainty. "People like you." He didn't finish the sentence. With a single step, Rook closed the distance between them. He lifted the crutch and held it inches from Cole's face, rotating it slightly so the boy had no choice but to see the footprint he left. "You did this?" Rook asked softly, too softly, the kind of softness that comes before something catastrophic. Cole stuttered, I didn't. She fell. Rook tilted his head. "That's not what the ground says." A sharp gasp traveled through the crowd. Even the breeze seemed to hesitate. The tension thickened, nearly combustible, so dense that a single breath, a single wrong move, could ignite an explosion no one could put out. Behind Rook, one of the bikers shifted, pulling something from his jacket. Students flinched. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a phone. The biker raised it, hit record, and aimed it straight at Cole and Rook. As the red recording light blinked on, Cole felt the cold certainty that whatever happened next would follow him far beyond Crestwood High. The courtyard had tightened into a perfect circle, students forming a shaky ring around Nala and the bikers, their faces pale with fear and fascination. No one dared to step closer. But no one could look away either. It was the kind of moment that felt suspended in time, every breath held hostage by uncertainty. Nala sat upright now, palms pressed to the concrete, her chest rising and falling unevenly. She didn't know whether to fear the bikers or the bully, or both. The only thing she knew was pain. Pain from her leg, pain from humiliation, pain from a world that never seemed to defend her. Rook turned toward her and crouched, lowering his voice to something strikingly gentle compared to the steel he'd given Cole. "Who did this to you, kid?" His eyes, cold when staring at Cole, softened, as if he recognized something fragile in her. But Nala didn't answer. Her lips pressed together. Her gaze dropped, not because she wanted to protect Cole, no. She just didn't trust anyone here. Cole stood several feet away, watching her refusal with growing panic. His face drained of color. Sweat gathered at his hairline. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Rook sensed her silence and slowly lifted the crutch again, angling it so she could see the footprint clearly. "You don't have to speak," he said. "The truth usually speaks for itself." Nala swallowed hard. Tears welled in her eyes, not dramatic sobs, but quiet, pained ones. She shook her head slightly, as if begging the world to stop looking at her. Behind Rook, one of the bikers, a tall, wiry man with a scar across his temple, stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Rook," he murmured, "you seeing what I'm seeing?" Rook didn't turn. "What are you talking about?" The scarred biker leaned in, expression tight. "That's her. The girl the chapter's been tracking for a year." Rook froze. A ripple of confusion moved through the nearby riders. "You sure?" Rook asked, still not taking his eyes off Nala. "Absolutely," the biker whispered. "Same face, same eyes, same build. The one from the old file." Nala looked up slowly, sensing something shift, something heavy and incomprehensible. "What file?" The biker didn't answer her. Instead, he whispered again into Rook's ear, "She's the girl connected to your missing contact." Rook's breath hitched for the first time since stepping foot on school grounds. His expression changed hard edges, softening into shock, then urgency, then something deeper, something close to recognition. He stood slowly, towering over everyone again. His gaze on Nala now carried gravity, like she wasn't just a victim. She was a key, a missing link, and she had no idea. Cole, watching all of this unfold, finally understood something terrifying. This wasn't random. This wasn't about a schoolyard fight. This wasn't even about him anymore. He had touched someone he should never have touched. Someone protected. Someone important. Someone tied to a group that didn't forgive mistakes. His legs wobbled, and his breath grew shallow. "Wait, what are you talking about? Who is she?" he demanded, voice cracking. Rook didn't even spare him a glance. Instead, he spoke quietly to Nala. "You don't know us yet, but your life intersects with ours more than you realize." The sentence hit the courtyard like a thunderclap. Students gasped. A few whispered frantically, "What does that mean? Is she related to one of them? Why would bikers look for her?" For the first time, Nala felt a chill run through her, not from fear of the bikers, but from the possibility that they knew something about her past that she didn't. Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. His world, every ounce of privilege, protection, and arrogance, was crumbling beneath his feet. Cole finally understood that he hadn't just picked the wrong target, he had picked the most dangerous one in the entire town. As tension reached its breaking point, a figure in a sharp, dark vest stepped out from the far side of the courtyard, and everything threatened to explode again. The echo of footsteps, sharp, hurried, authoritative, cut through the courtyard's tension. Heads whipped toward the outdoor hallway as Principal Evelyn Monroe stormed into view, her heels striking the ground like warning shots. Her face was tight, controlled, but her eyes flashed with panic the moment she saw the motorcycles, the crowd, and Rook towering near Nala. Behind her, teachers followed anxiously, but none dared to move ahead of her. "Enough!" Monroe shouted, lifting both hands as though she could push the chaos away with sheer will. "This is a school. All of you leave immediately!" Her voice bounced off the brick walls, brittle with fear and authority. Rook didn't budge. He didn't step back. He didn't even blink. He simply turned his head toward her, slow and deliberate, like a predator acknowledging an intruder. His silence alone made several students flinch. Monroe swallowed, but forced herself forward, placing her body between Rook and Cole, as if she were shielding the boy from some unwarranted threat. "You have no right to be here," she snapped, voice trembling beneath its forced confidence. "This is trespassing, and I will be calling the police if you don't." Rook tilted his head, studying her, not aggressively, not disrespectfully, but with a chilling calm that made teachers step back without thinking. "I'm already talking to the police," he murmured. "They just haven't arrived yet." Students whispered. Monroe's jaw tightened. Cole, sensing a lifeline, rushed to her side. "Principal Monroe," he gasped. "They're threatening us. I didn't do anything, she just fell, I swear." Nala's breath caught. Even for Cole, this level of lying was monstrous. Monroe placed a hand on Cole's shoulder protectively, turning toward the watching crowd like a performer on a stage. "Everyone listen," she announced. "This girl," she pointed to Nala without even looking at her, "has a history of accidents. She must have slipped again. No one is at fault here." A collective gasp rippled through the students. They knew the truth. They saw the truth. And now they were forced to watch their principal erase it in real time. "Are you serious?" a girl near the fountain cried out. "He kicked her," another student shouted. "You're lying for him," someone else added. Monroe ignored them all. Her fingers tightened on Cole's shoulder as if holding onto a political investment. Her tone sharpened. "This situation is over. These bikers need to leave before they create further disruption." Nala simply fell. That is the official account. Nala's vision blurred with humiliation. Her throat closed. She felt smaller than ever. Rook, on the other hand, went completely still. The kind of stillness that comes before something irreversible. His jaw clenched. The tendons in his neck tightened, and his hand curled slowly into a fist. His eyes, those cold, steel-gray eyes, bored into Monroe with such intensity that several students instinctively stepped back from the shockwave of silent fury radiating off him. Monroe finally noticed the shift and faltered. Her voice wavered. "This is my school, sir. You will not intimidate me." Rook stepped closer. Just one step, but it was enough for the air to thicken. "You're not worth intimidating," he said softly. "You're simply exposing yourself." Monroe stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Rook lifted the crutch, turning it so she could see the footprint pressed into its fabric. Monroe's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The students erupted in furious whispers. "She can't cover that up. Everybody saw. This is messed up." The weight of their outrage hung heavily in the air. Monroe looked trapped, caught between the truth she wanted to bury and the truth staring her down. Rook's fist tightened at his side, and in his eyes burned a rage so fierce it looked ready to set the entire school ablaze. At that exact moment, the piercing screech of tires tore through the courtyard as a luxury car skidded to a halt at the school gate. The luxury sedan hadn't even finished skidding before the driver's door burst open. Zane Branson, Crestwood's most infamous lawyer and Cole's father, stormed out with the fury of a man who expected the world to step aside simply because he existed. His tailored suit glinted under the sun, his polished shoes striking the pavement with sharp, confident thuds as he marched toward the courtyard. Every student recognized him instantly. Every teacher stiffened. Every bully who worshipped Cole's dominance understood where he learned it. Zane Branson was the kind of man who believed rules were written for everyone except him. "Cole," he barked, voice slicing through the tension like a blade. Cole's face lit up with relief. Finally, his safety net had arrived. He jogged toward his father, staying close behind Monroe for protection. Zane scanned the crowd, eyes landing on the 15 Harleys, the leather vests, the intimidating figures, and finally on Rook standing defiantly above them all. "Oh, this is rich," Zane spat. "You brought a gang onto school grounds?" Rook remained perfectly still, watching him the same way one might observe a barking stray. Mildly curious, not remotely threatened. Monroe stepped forward, clinging to her authority. "Mr. Branson, thank goodness you're here." "These men," Zane cut her off with a dismissive wave. Yes, Evelyn, I know. And you're smart enough not to touch my son. Especially now." His voice carried a sharpness meant to remind her who donated the most to the school board. He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he strode directly toward Rook. "You!" He jabbed a finger at the biker's chest. "I don't care who you think you are. You are trespassing. You have no business here. And you're terrifying students. You're done." Rook stared at the accusing finger without lowering his gaze. Zane continued, louder, so everyone could hear. "I'm filing charges for trespassing, harassment, and intimidation. And when I'm through, you and your little biker club will be banned from every public space in this county." Cole grinned behind him, smug, arrogant, already imagining his vindication, but the crowd wasn't with them. Students whispered, "He didn't even ask what happened. He just assumes Cole's innocent. He's gonna twist everything." Zane stepped closer, invading Rook's space without understanding the danger. "Principal Monroe knows better than to let anyone threaten my son, not with the political climate the way it is," he said, smirking. "She won't lay a finger on him, and neither will you." Monroe swallowed hard but didn't deny it. Rook finally spoke, his voice low, cold, and controlled. "You talk a lot for a man who doesn't know what happened." Zane scoffed. "I don't need to know what happened. I know my son." A murmur of disbelief traveled through the students. Zane took another step, his nose practically touching Rook's chest. "One more thing," he growled. "This school, this town belongs to people like me, not outlaws like you." Cole's smirk widened. He folded his arms, nodding as if his father were delivering a victory speech. But Rook didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He didn't even breathe differently. Instead, he slowly lifted his hand and made a gesture, 2 fingers raised, subtle but unmistakable. A signal. Behind him, all 15 bikers straightened simultaneously, like soldiers awaiting command. The synchronized movement sent a chilling ripple through the courtyard. Students gasped. Even Monroe stumbled backward. Cole's smirk twitched. His confidence wavered. Zane looked around, finally noticing just how outnumbered and outmatched he truly was. Cole's grin faltered as he realized something his father didn't. Arrogance might win court cases, but it couldn't save them from the storm Rook Maddox was about to unleash. Rook lowered his hand just slightly, and that tiny gesture made one biker behind him raise his phone, hitting the record button for all the world to see. The courtyard had gone from chaotic to suffocating. Students packed every corner on benches, behind pillars, pressed against railings holding their phones up like witnesses in a public trial. The 15 Harleys stood in an iron semicircle, their chrome catching the sunlight like drawn blades. Then, one biker stepped forward. He was younger than the others, wearing mirrored sunglasses and a patched leather vest that seemed to amplify the silence around him. Without a word, he lifted his phone high, pressed a button, and went live. Students gasped. A few whispered frantically, "Oh my God, he's live streaming this. People are gonna freak out. This is the whole Hells Angels chapter. Is that legal? Legal or not?" The live stream counter began ticking immediately. 47 viewers. Basha Joe, 230. In less than 10 seconds, it surged past 1,000. Comments flooded the screen so fast the biker couldn't even read them. Cole stiffened. "Turn that off!" he barked, voice cracking. "You can't film me, this is illegal!" The biker didn't even look at him. The camera remained steady, focused, unwavering. Zane stepped up, pointing angrily. "Stop recording! I'll sue every one of you!" But his threat vanished beneath the roar of digital attention. The numbers climbed again. 1,400. Launchen Jobai, 5,000 viewers. Students cheered or panicked, depending on whose side they were on. The tension thickened as the viewer count exploded, not just local kids, but adults, parents, townspeople, tuning in to see the truth unfold in real time. Then, the twist hit. A comment flashed across the screen. "Check the school camera. There's footage." Another comment followed. "Upload the clip." "I have it." The biker hosting the stream tilted the phone to one side as someone stepped into frame, another biker holding a USB drive and a small portable monitor. He plugged it into his phone with practiced precision, and suddenly, the live stream screen split in two. Left side, the live courtyard confrontation. Right side, a recording from the school's own security camera. Students leaned in. Teachers froze. Monroe's breath hitched. There, on the right side of the live stream, in perfect clarity, from a clean, high-angle view, Cole Branson stepping forward. Cole Branson lifting his foot. Cole Branson kicking Nala's cast with full force. Nala collapsing and screaming. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Someone yelled, "That's the camera angle from hallway 3. Another added, "The principal said the camera was broken." More gasps. More anger. Monroe nearly collapsed. Her face drained of color, lips trembling, because everyone understood what this meant. She hadn't just protected Cole. She had buried evidence. She had lied to the entire school. Students shouted, "You covered it up. You lied for him." Nala didn't fall. He hurt her. "You're finished, Monroe." Cole stood frozen, mouth open, his confidence obliterated by the brutal clarity of the footage. Zane, who had been smirking moments earlier, stared at the screen as though it had betrayed him personally. His jaw tensed, his pupils shrank. For the first time that day, the great Zane Branson looked afraid, terrified, even, because the one thing he couldn't manipulate, couldn't intimidate, couldn't silence, was video evidence played to 5,000 viewers in real time. Zane's face transformed from smug certainty to raw panic, because he finally realized the situation was spiraling beyond his control. And then, slicing through the tension like a clean blade, the wail of a police siren grew louder as Officer Reed's patrol car rolled into the courtyard. The police cruiser rolled to a stop with a screech that silenced even the loudest whispers. Red and blue lights flashed violently across the courtyard, painting the students, motorcycles, and faculty in rapid, pulsing colors. The crowd parted as Officer Daniel Reed stepped out, hand on his belt, posture rigid, eyes sharp. Reed wasn't just any officer. He was the kind that made people straighten their backs and rethink their decisions. Even the bikers watched him closely. "Everybody stand back," Reed commanded, voice booming with trained authority. "This ends now." He approached the circle where Rook, Cole and Zane stood at the center of the unfolding chaos. Students instinctively fell silent, sensing that this moment held more weight than anything so far. "Step away from each other," Reed said, gesturing firmly between the bikers and the Bransons. "No more confrontations." Zane immediately seized the opportunity. "Officer Reed, thank God you're here," he said, stepping forward, full of performative relief. "Arrest these men. They brought a gang into a school and tried to intimidate my son." Cole nodded vigorously, inching behind his father for protection. Reed held up a hand. "I'll talk to everyone, one at a time." But Rook took a single step forward, placing himself between Reed and the younger bikers. "We're not here to fight," he said calmly, though the rumble beneath his voice hinted at a storm barely contained. "We're here for the truth." Reed's eyes flickered between them. "Truth doesn't come from threats." "We didn't make threats," Rook replied, "but we won't ignore what that boy did." Zane exploded. "You don't get to accuse my son of—" Rook cut him off with a glare. "Your son is on camera." Reed paused. "What camera?" The younger biker, still live-streaming, stepped forward, turning his phone toward Reed. "The split-screen footage live courtyard on the left. School security angle on the right shone bright in the sunlight." Reed leaned in. The color drained from his face. The footage played again. Cole's foot. The impact. Nala's scream. Her fall. Reed's jaw tightened. His nostrils flared. He closed his eyes for a brief second, then exhaled as if steadying himself. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice noticeably lower. Rook answered, "Your school's own system." The camera Monroe claimed was broken. A loud murmur erupted among the students. Monroe, standing among teachers, turned away as if the floor might swallow her. Reed stared at Cole, who now looked like a boy caught with every lie written across his face. Reed shifted his gaze to Zane, lawyer, manipulator, expert at bending truth until it broke. But this time, even he seemed rattled. Cole's voice cracked as he whispered to his father, "Dad, I didn't know they had the footage." Zane grabbed his arm roughly. "Don't say anything." But it was too late. Reed had heard enough. He stepped between Cole and Rook, but not to defend the boy. His hand hovered over the cuffs on his belt. The crowd gasped. Cole's breath hitched. His eyes widened with the horror of someone realizing they were no longer protected, not by privilege, not by lies, not even by their powerful father. He finally understood. He might not escape this. Not this time. Reed swallowed hard, then spoke slowly. "I'm going to need statements from all involved." "And Cole," he looked at the trembling teenager. "You're coming with me," Zane erupted. "Absolutely not." "You have no grounds for." Reed overrode him. "Battery of a disabled student is grounds." The courtyard exploded with whispers and shock. Cole's knees nearly buckled as the truth crashed over him. His father's influence couldn't stop what was coming next. And yet, even as Reed reached for his cuffs, there was something in his eyes, a heaviness, a secret he hadn't revealed, one that would change everything. Officer Reed pulled Cole slightly aside, away from the thickest part of the crowd, but still within view of the students and the 15 Harleys. The tension in the air clung to every breath. The courtyard felt too small to contain the weight of everything happening. Zane lunged forward. "You're not taking my son anywhere. I'll have your badge for this." Reed didn't react. He simply raised a hand, signaling for silence. But Zane Branson wasn't a man who understood the concept of silence. "You listen to me, officer," he snarled. "You think you can put cuffs on someone like my son without consequences? I'll bury you in lawsuits." Rook stepped forward before Reed could answer. "Back off," he growled quietly. The threat wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. It vibrated beneath the surface like a held-back earthquake. Students gasped. Teachers froze. Zane stumbled one step backward, realizing he'd just challenged a man who negotiated with threats the way lawyers negotiated with contracts. Reed exhaled slowly and motioned for Rook to step aside with him, toward the quieter shade behind the fountain. Rook followed. 2 other bikers flanked them, but kept their distance. Zane, confused and seething, tried to push through the crowd, but students held him back, some out of outrage, others out of fear that he might ignite something uncontrollable. Behind the fountain, Reed rubbed his temples briefly, then looked up at Rook, with a gaze heavy with years of unspoken history. "We need to talk," Reed murmured. Rook folded his arms. "We already are." Reed hesitated. The silence between them grew thick. Finally, he said quietly, "You know I'm not blind to injustice. Not after what happened back then." Rook's eyes narrowed slightly. "So you remember." "How could I forget?" Reed replied. "You pulled me out of that warehouse when the raid turned bad. You saved my life." Rook didn't respond. He didn't need to. The admission alone carried more weight than anything he could say. The watching bikers exchanged glances. A few students who'd crept close enough to overhear felt chills run down their spines. Officer Reed, the rigid, by-the-book lawman, and Rook Maddox, the outlaw biker leader, weren't enemies. They were connected, deeply, painfully, secretly. And now, that buried connection had just risen to the surface of a high school courtyard for the first time in over a decade. Reed's voice softened. "I can't ignore what your people showed me. Cole assaulted a disabled student. Monroe covered it up. The whole school helped him get away with it." Rook's jaw tightened. "So what are you going to do?" Reed looked over at the crowd, at Nala, still trembling, at Cole, sweating through his arrogance, at Zane, furious and helpless, at Monroe, hiding behind teachers, at the students wondering if justice ever applied to people like them. Then he made his decision. "I'm detaining Cole Branson for questioning," Reed said firmly. "He's coming down to the station." Rook nodded once, a gesture of respect, not triumph. When Reed turned back toward the center of the courtyard, his voice regained its official authority. "Cole Branson," he said loudly, "you're being taken into custody for investigation into the assault of a disabled minor." A collective gasp rose like a wave. Cole's face went ashen. His knees buckled slightly. His father stepped forward again, shouting incoherently, "You can't do this. You can't touch my son. I'll destroy your whole department." Reed didn't even look at him. For the first time in Cole's life, his father's rage meant absolutely nothing. As Reed reached for the cuffs, Cole finally understood a truth he had never faced before. His father's power was no longer strong enough to shield him. And as the squad car doors slammed shut minutes later, word of the arrest began spreading across Crestwood, traveling through phones, gossip chains, and social media feeds, until the entire town was buzzing with shock. News didn't just spread through Crestwood, it detonated. By the time Officer Reed pulled out of the school parking lot with Cole in the back seat, the video of the assault had already made its way into every diner, barbershop, grocery store, and living room in town. People watched it over morning coffee, over late lunches, on breaks from construction sites, on treadmills at the gym, and everyone had an opinion. At Marty's diner, a group of retirees huddled over a booth, their pancakes untouched. "That boy needs to be held accountable," one woman muttered. "Can you believe the principal tried to bury it?" another replied. "I knew Monroe was crooked, but covering up violence against a disabled girl? She's done." At the local gas station, teens leaned against their cars, refreshing the live stream clips again and again. "Bro." The bikers came out of nowhere. "Nala's leg was already broken. He kicked her for real." "Zane Branson is finished. He can't spin his way out of this." Even the morning radio host, who usually stuck to sports and weather, led the hour with breaking news from Crestwood High. "Cole Branson, son of attorney Zane Branson, is under investigation after live stream footage revealed a violent assault. Stay tuned." The clip replayed every 20 minutes, everywhere. The town buzzed with collective outrage. On social media, hashtags started trending locally. Number Justice for Nala. Number Crestwood Cover-Up. Number Cole Branson Exposed. Number Monroe Must Go Parents commented angrily under the school district's Facebook page. "How dare you let this happen? Fire Monroe immediately. My child doesn't feel safe at Crestwood." Screenshots of Monroe standing protectively in front of Cole went viral, paired with captions like, "This is what corruption looks like." Meanwhile, at the Branson estate on Hillcrest Road, Zane was losing control publicly, privately, and politically. He stood inside his marble kitchen, two phones ringing non-stop on the counter, each buzzing with emails, mentions, and news alerts that he could no longer ignore. Every caller wanted answers. Every message demanded explanation. Every headline spelled a crisis. Cole's name was plastered across local news feeds. Teen athlete under investigation for assault at Crestwood High. Livestream raises questions about school leadership and legal interference. Is Crestwood protecting bullies? Zane tried to respond, to assert dominance the way he always had, but every attempt fell flat. His voice, once commanding, now sounded small beneath the weight of the town's fury. Cole paced the living room, pale and shaken. For the first time, he wasn't smirking. He wasn't bragging. He wasn't protected. "Dad, what are we gonna do?" he whispered. Zane snapped, "I'm handling it," but his trembling hands betrayed him. He wasn't handling anything. Not the reporters gathering outside. Not the angry emails from the school board. Not the furious parents demanding action. Not the bikers who had publicly exposed his lies. Not the police investigations spiraling beyond his control. And certainly not the collapse of the reputation he'd spent decades manufacturing. Across town, Principal Monroe faced her own reckoning. News vans camped outside the district office. Teachers whispered behind closed doors. Students circulated petitions calling for her resignation. Monroe sat at her desk, staring blankly at the frozen frame of the live stream. Cole's foot raised. Nala's face twisted in pain. She knew she couldn't talk her way out of what the world had already seen. The town had chosen a side, and it wasn't hers. Everywhere in homes, restaurants, streets, and group chats, the same sentiment echoed. The Bransons aren't untouchable anymore. The empire that once ruled Crestwood with intimidation and quiet deals now shook on unstable ground. For the first time, the Branson family felt something they had never experienced in Crestwood, a full-scale revolt against their power. And while the town roared with accusations and demands, Nala was quietly preparing to reveal the final missing piece of the secret that tied her fate to the Hells Angels. The small, fluorescent-lit infirmary at Crestwood High felt like a world apart from the chaos outside. The hum of the ceiling vent, the soft clink of medical tools, and the faint scent of antiseptic created a strange calm, an island of sterile quiet in the center of a storm. Nala sat on the examination cot, her cast resting stiffly on a pillow. Her hands trembled in her lap. The school nurse, Miss Alden, hovered nearby with a clipboard pressed to her chest, her expression torn between fear and guilt. Rook stood in the corner, arms crossed, taking up nearly half the room. His presence was overwhelming, but not threatening. Not here, not with her. His eyes, usually hard as steel, watched her with something gentler concern, confusion, and a hint of recognition he still couldn't place. "Nala," Rook said quietly, "I need to ask you something, but only if you're ready." She inhaled shakily. I know." The nurse shifted, chewing her lip anxiously. "It's okay, sweetheart. You can say it now." Nala looked down at her, cast the symbol of months of pain, isolation, humiliation. Her voice came out small, fragile. "My leg didn't break, because I fell," she whispered. Rook didn't move, but the air around him tightened. Nala swallowed, forcing the words up from wherever she had buried them. "It happened behind the gym, months ago. Cole was on his bike and he started chasing me." The nurse let out a shaky breath, as if hearing the confession again still cut deep. "I told him to stop," Nala continued, tears forming. "But he kept yelling things at me. He said I walked too slow, said I was in the way. And then he steered his bike right into me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "He hit me so hard I flew into the metal bleachers." Rook's jaw clenched. The room seemed to darken around him. "I screamed," Nala said, voice cracking, "and Miss Alden came running. She took me to the hospital. I told her what happened." The nurse stepped forward, eyes shining with guilt. "Yes, she did tell me. She told me everything." Nala lifted her head slightly. But when Principal Monroe arrived, she said it would ruin the school's reputation. She said Cole couldn't be blamed for an unfortunate accident. She made Miss Alden stay quiet. She made me stay quiet. The nurse nodded miserably. I'm so sorry. I tried to push back, but Monroe threatened to fire me if I wrote the incident honestly. Silence swallowed the room. Then, very slowly, Rook's hand curled into a fist, but this time, not from rage, from heartbreak. He stared at Nala, seeing not just an injured child, but a girl who had endured violence, silence, and institutional betrayal alone. His voice, when it finally came, was rough with emotion. You should have never been left alone with this. Nala wiped her tears. No one listened. I'm listening now, Rook said. And for the first time, Nala believed him. Rook's fist closed tighter, not with the desire to strike, but with the pain of knowing a child had suffered long before he arrived. And as Nala spoke, Officer Reed outside the room was already reopening case files, preparing to launch an investigation far bigger than anyone expected. The marble hallway of the Crestwood Town Hall echoed with impatient footsteps, hushed arguments, and the low hum of fluorescent lights. Reporters crowded outside the chamber doors, microphones in hand, waiting for any scrap of information about the Branson scandal. The air felt charged heavy with judgment, expectation, and the scent of a political empire trembling. Zane Branson stormed down the corridor first, jaw clenched, tie pulled loose, as though he had ripped at it in frustration. His phone rang non-stop, vibrating violently in his grip, but he silenced every call with a furious swipe. Behind him, Officer Reed walked with a calm, disciplined stride, a sealed evidence bag tucked under his arm. Rook Maddox followed a few steps back, the leather of his jacket creaking softly with each step, his presence turning heads even without saying a word. Zane spun around the moment he reached the end of the hall. This has gone far enough, he barked. You can't push this investigation any further. You mention that video again, and I will sue this entire town into bankruptcy. Reed didn't break stride. You can sue whoever you want. The evidence stands. Zane's face twisted with rage. I want that footage destroyed. Immediately. It's hearsay. Illegally obtained. Misinterpreted, whatever legal term you want. It doesn't belong in a courtroom. Rook finally stepped forward. His boots landed like anchors on the polished floor, and the chatter around them died. Even the reporters stopped breathing for a moment. Zane tried to regain control. And you, he pointed at Rook. You and your little biker gang think you're heroes. You ruined my son's future. I'll personally make sure every one of you is charged with trespassing, intimidation, interference, harassment. Rook cut him off, his voice deep and controlled. We didn't ruin your son's future, he said. Your son did. The words struck harder than any threat could. Zane stepped closer, invading Rook's space, finger stabbing the air. You think you're something special? You think anyone in this town respects a criminal like you? Rook didn't move an inch. We're not here for respect, he said. We're here for the truth, Zane scoffed. Truth? You came here for revenge. And then the hallway fell still as Rook delivered the line that split the building in half. We're not seeking revenge. We're demanding justice. The sentence echoed off the marble walls, sharp enough to silence every whisper. Even Zane froze, eyes widening, rage flickering into something else, fear. Officer Reed stepped between them, pulling the sealed evidence bag into view. Inside was the recovered security drive from Crestwood High's cameras. This, Reed announced, is now officially logged as evidence. It will be presented at the emergency hearing. Zane lunged forward, desperation replacing arrogance. You can't. I forbid it. You don't have that authority, Reed replied flatly. Zane's breath stuttered. The color drained from his face as he realized the truth. His money couldn't buy this away. His threats couldn't bury it. His influence couldn't protect Cole anymore. For the first time, the attorney who had intimidated half the town looked small-cornered by the truth he tried to suppress. Zane Branson understood, unmistakably, that he was losing the one thing he prized more than power control. Minutes later, the chamber doors opened, and a clerk announced the words that sent a ripple through the entire hallway. Emergency disciplinary hearing for Crestwood High now in session. The council chamber inside Crestwood Town Hall was packed beyond capacity. Wooden benches overflowed with parents, teachers, and townspeople. Reporters lined the aisles with cameras ready. Tension pulsed through the air like static electricity. At the front of the room sat the six-member school board stern, expressionless, gripping folders of evidence that had shaken the entire district. Principal Monroe sat at one table, rigid, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Cole sat at another, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floor. His father, Zane, hovered behind him like a shadow refusing to accept defeat. Officer Reed stood to the side, evidence already submitted. Rook remained in the very back, silent, unblinking, a storm held behind leather and steel, and Nala, small and brave, sat between two counselors with her cast stretched before her. The chairman cleared his throat. This emergency hearing has been called to determine accountability regarding the assault on student Nala Johnson and the subsequent administrative misconduct. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The first to be questioned was Monroe. Principal Monroe, the board president said. "Did you suppress camera footage showing the assault?" Monroe hesitated 1 second too long. "I made a judgment call to prevent escalation." "In other words," another board member said sharply, "you hid evidence." Gasps erupted. Monroe's face crumpled. "You put the school's reputation above a child's safety," the president added. "And you lied to the district." Monroe's silence became her confession. Cole was called next. He rose shakily, knees nearly buckling as the security footage appeared on the monitor. His kick, Nala's scream, her collapse. "Mr. Branson," a board member said, "do you deny this is you?" Cole shook his head weakly. "No." The room tensed. Zane shot up. "He's a minor. This is being blown out of proportion." The chairman slammed his gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Branson." Zane froze, stunned. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Finally, the board turned to Nala. She stood slowly, gripping her crutches. The room fell silent, not out of pity, but out of the weight of her truth. "Nala," the chairman said gently, "is there anything you want to tell us before we deliberate?" Nala's eyes scanned the room. Monroe trembling, shrinking, Zane seething, parents watching, reporters recording. Then her gaze landed on Rook, steady, unwavering, silently telling her she didn't have to be afraid anymore. She breathed in, and her voice, though soft, sliced through the chamber. "I just wanted to feel safe at school." Silence slammed into the room. No accusation, no dramatics, just the simple truth from a girl who had endured far more than anyone realized. And that was enough. The board members exchanged looks, nodding grimly. "We've reached our decision." Every spine stiffened. The chairman read the verdict. "Cole Branson is hereby expelled from Crestwood High, effective immediately. A formal report will be forwarded to the juvenile justice system. Principal Evelyn Monroe is suspended indefinitely pending termination review, as is and the district will implement a full anti-bullying and discrimination reform effective today." The room erupted, some in shock, some in anger, most in relief. It was the harshest judgment Crestwood had issued in decades, and for the first time, justice felt real. And as the hearing adjourned, sunlight broke over Crestwood, marking the beginning of a new day and a new chapter for Nala. The morning light draped Crestwood High in a soft gold glow, the kind that made the fountain sparkle and cast long, warm shadows across the courtyard. It was the same spot where Nala had once fallen, where her crutch hit the pavement, where pain stole her breath, where silence surrounded her. But today, everything was different. Students gathered in clusters, holding handmade signs with bold letters. "Stand with Nala. Justice is not optional." No more silence. For the first time, the school felt united, not through fear, not through habit, but through purpose. Cole Branson was gone. The official notice had been taped to the main office window that morning. Expelled, pending further investigation by juvenile authorities. His absence echoed through the hallways like the end of an era Crestwood was relieved to leave behind. Monroe's office sat dark and locked her suspension effective immediately. Teachers no longer whispered out of fear, but out of disbelief that the woman who ruled the school with an iron fist had finally been held accountable. But the heart of the change was Nala. She stood quietly in the courtyard, Cass still wrapped around her leg, hands resting lightly on her crutches. The morning breeze brushed her braids, sunlight kissed her face. She looked fragile only at a glance, but her eyes told another story. Strength, resilience, fire. The same students who once glanced away now approached her with gentle words, apologies, encouragement. A few kids who barely knew her placed posters at her feet. Flowers, drawings, messages of hope. Thank you for speaking up. You're the reason things are changing. We're with you. Nala swallowed hard, overwhelmed not by fear this time, but by something warmer, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Belonging. Seconds later, the familiar deep growl of a Harley drifted into the courtyard. Heads turned as Rook Maddox stepped off his bike, not with the thunder of the Hells Angels behind him, but alone, quiet, steady. Students parted instinctively as he walked toward Nala, the same path he'd taken on the day everything exploded. But today, with no anger, no violence simmering beneath his skin, just purpose, he stopped beside her and rested a broad, reassuring hand on her shoulder. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of everything he felt: respect, protection, something close to pride. His voice was low, roughened by emotion. You're not alone. Nala lifted her gaze to meet his. There was no fear in her eyes now, only gratitude and newfound courage. Around them, the Stand With Nala group raised their signs higher, chanting softly, letting their voices ripple across the courtyard like a promise that what happened to her would never be allowed to happen again. This wasn't just the end of a scandal, it was the beginning of a shift, a rewriting of Crestwood's culture, a collective refusal to tolerate cruelty and silence. What began as a single violent kick, an act meant to break her, had instead become the spark that changed an entire town. As the bell rang in the distance, Nala turned toward the school building. Her future stretched before her like an open road, uncertain. Yes, but hers. She was no longer a victim, no longer invisible, no longer alone. She was a symbol, a voice, a beginning. And Crestwood, for the first time in years, was ready to rise with her. And just like that, a single cruel kick flipped Crestwood upside down. The bullies who once strutted through the yard realized too late that power doesn't come from hurting the weak, it comes from who shows up when justice calls. Nala walked away stronger. The school changed forever, and the Hells Angels proved that karma sometimes rides a Harley. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of this story shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts below. If this story hit you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More eye-opening tales are on the way.